Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Mark's Side of the Ring. I am your host, Miguel Minetti, alongside my co-host, Nick Fiorentino. Nick, how's it going, brother?
It's going good. Ready to talk some wrestling. Day 2 of the draft. A lot going on, so excited to talk.
Nice. Before we kind of jump right into it with our special guest here, Nick, as always, man, what do you got drinking tonight?
Well, for those of you who have watched Sharp Bets and Fantasy Sets already, you know I've been drinking a little bit of tequila tonight, but I switched it up for wrestling. We're going with a nice mojito. I wish I had something better, but that's what I'm drinking.
Well, quite honestly, Nick, no one gives a rat's ass about your mojito because, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a special guest on for us for our exciting episode today, and that's the Nashville singer and songwriter PJ North. PJ, how you doing, bud?
What's going on, guys? How are you, man? I'm doing great. How's everything going?
We're doing good, buddy. We're excited to have you on here. We talked to my friend Scott Gambino, obviously executive and founder of TruExact Radio. He told me that you're a big wrestling fan, so we wanted to kind of get you on the podcast to talk all things wrestling. We heard you're a big fan.
Well, man, I appreciate y'all having me out here tonight, man. I am a big wrestling fan, and Scott was like, of course you are, and that's on brand for me. So I'm happy to be here, talk a little wrestling. There's nothing I love more than to talk a little wrestling. So
Good, buddy. Well, we're excited to have you on, and we're about to get right into it. But just real quickly, for the viewers at home, PJ, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do there, bud?
Yeah, man, I'm a singer-songwriter here in Nashville, Tennessee. I moved here in 2016. I've been making music for a long time. I started out doing a lot of pop, hip-hop stuff, but I grew up on country music. I love country music, and now I've gotten the chance to kind of meld all of my music tastes together into this thing we call pop-punk country, and it's like it's my own deal. You can check me out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, The PJ North. Yes, that's a shot at Ohio State for all you Ohio State fans. But yeah, check it out, thepjnorth.com. I got a new single coming out next week. We can talk about that later. But yeah, that's kind of my whole spiel. I'm a singer, songwriter, race car driver, part-time wrestling mark. Huge fan of all those things. I try to stay busy, so I'm happy to be here tonight.
PJ, since you're a country music center, first and foremost, I agree with Miguel. Thanks for jumping on and being a part of the show. Is it true as a country music singer, songwriter, and wrestling fan that your favorite country song so far is "Spend My Days Working Hard on the Go, but the hands
on the clock keep spinning too slow. I can't wait
to be alone with my baby tonight"?
I'm telling you, I wish I was the roadie. I wish that was my gimmick. I wish that I had come up with that idea as a kid, but that is still a great entrance theme. I'm not gonna lie. If Jeff Jarrett came out to that right now, I would stand up and cheer.
Nice.
I think the one thing we can easily all agree on is that PJ is a hell of a better singer than Nick. Nick, I never want to hear you sing a song ever again after that.
That's the second time. No more. I'm done singing.
Love it. I love it.
PJ, maybe in a little bit we'll get you to sing the Honky Tonk theme song as well.
There you go. That's one of my favorites. As a kid, I think I'll tell you this quick story about why I love wrestling before we get into it. I grew up on the 90s, early 90s. The earliest I can remember really is the 92 Rumble, Flair winning, of course. But I kind of remember that, but I really remember 93 the most with Yokozuna throwing Macho Man over the top and him destroying him in the last part of the Rumble. I really remember watching that and then watching WrestleMania 9. But one of the things that I love about pro wrestling is you're really nothing without entrance music. I know that I like wrestling from the 80s, but if there wasn't theme music coming down, you weren't that great. You know what I mean? The Rock and Roll Express, the Fabulous Freebirds, all that stuff really changed when I'm able to watch older wrestling because of that. The music thing really changed it for me. And it's part show. It's this whole ordeal of why I love wrestling. And still to this day, I love wrestlers strictly for their theme music. I don't know that I would have been the biggest Andrade fan had it not been El Idolo. And then I just don't know if I would have been. Yeah. And so for me, that's a huge deal. And so it's a really cool thing to be able to kind of intertwine those two. I do some theme music for some wrestlers now, including Dr. Dan, by the way. He's my favorite independent wrestler in Cleveland, Ohio. Shout out to Dr. Dan C. Rockingham. But anyways, yeah, so that's kind of my deal with the music. It's one of those things for me that the entrance music is really such a huge part of it. So it's really weird without the fans, to be honest.
Absolutely. And I got to ask you, since we're on the topic right now, what do you think is the greatest theme song ever in wrestling history?
Man, it boils down, as much as I hate to say it, I still believe that Hogan's Real American is the best of all time. And I think the best now, though, has to be Jericho's Judas. I don't see how anybody can watch pro wrestling right now and not say, you might have never even seen AEW, but like the fact that they pause the music and the crowd sings the rest, I mean, that's unheard of. And I think, you know, in this day, it's a catchy song, but I would say it has to be Hogan. Unfortunately, you know, as much as I hate to say that, and as much as a weird person he is now, it's got to be, you know, I am a real American. I was ripping shirts when I was a kid, doing the whole thing, you know, and I ruined many a shirt I wish I still had.
I was always on the heel side, so growing up, to me, I don't know if you know this, but my favorite wrestler is Triple H. So
I agree with that too, man. I mean, it's without his entrance, is he as good of as big of a star as he became? Regardless of the Stephanie McMahon thing, regardless of any of that, without his entrance, he's not. I mean, how many kids reenacted water bottle, hair, spit, do the whole thing? I mean, I did that in school. All that. So I did the Goldberg thing, right? The neck roll. I was doing all that. I wanted to be that. So without, you know, for me, it's really hard to see that a wrestler doesn't become as big a star without the entrance music. I think Kanellis probably doesn't. Mike Bennett doesn't last as long in WWE as he did without the entrance music. Because he's okay, but he's got a kind of soft finisher. It's kind of whatever. And now it's a personal preference, whatever. But again, his music was bomb. Everyone's like, oh, man, Kanellis is coming out. This match is going to suck. This entrance is great. My favorite 30 seconds of Raw or 205 Live is right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on the impact that entrance music has in professional wrestling. I think for Triple H, for someone like Triple H, I mean, yeah, you know, arguably one of the greatest, if not one of the greatest of all time, but the game by Motorhead really gets everybody hyped, right? Every time,
100%.
Even today. So,
100%.
As far as who has the best entrance theme song currently, I think Judas is up there, but I would go with The Fiend. I think The Fiend, and for The Fiend, it might be more of the theatrics behind it, but his song is one of the most polarizing songs currently in professional wrestling.
I'd agree with that too. Nick, what do you think? I'm gonna let you. Nick, what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, we must be at least around the same age, because I remember the same stuff you remember. I remember my first wrestling event I was ever taken to was at the Meadowlands here in New Jersey, and it was around the time some of the matches on the card were Shawn Michaels against Bret Hart, Nails versus the Big Boss Man.
Right into '93. Yeah.
Yeah. The main event was the Ultimate Warrior against Papa Shango, and I remember. I don't remember much, but I remember the finish was the big splash and the 1, 2, 3, and the Warriors music went off, and I fucking 7 or 8-year-old me was running around like the Mets just won the World Series. I just remember jumping up and screaming and being so
100%.
happy. In terms of best theme music, it's got to be Hulk Hogan's. I mean, I would agree. I mean, I also like Austin's, the Ultimate Warriors. There's so many. The Undertaker's. There's so many that just like you hear like the first note or the first 2 notes and it just brings back such great memories. But you got to go Hogan is the greatest theme song of all time.
Yeah, short of like, and again, I told you I watch a lot of indie wrestling and I watch a lot of New Japan and things like that. Like, short of anybody, Judas is as big to me. Like Minoru Suzuki's had the same song for a long time, and his is like if you've never watched it and you only watch Japanese commentary, like. I don't speak Japanese, but like it adds a different effect for me. And when Suzuki comes out and that music hits, like everyone in the stadium knows it, and you're just like, what? Like it's a polarizing effect, and I think Hogan's situation is the same deal. That imagine just being like a fan and like Hogan hasn't been in the business in years, right? And you're sitting and you're at Raw, and the first thing you hear is dun 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 dun, and you're just like, oh my, you're losing your mind. And I can't imagine being in the '80s. Having that impact, like that would have been a game. I mean, just like the fingers pointed to head, it's just a thing to me. Like, man, that game changed it for me. And I never got to see Hogan. I got to see Hogan in NWO. I never got to see him as a kid, when I was younger. But just being a fan, that way. And I remember Bret Hart's had the same type of impact in '93, '94 when my brother and sister were fans as well, and we would go. It had a similar impact. That that it's almost like Shinsuke, right? Where it's like you hear that and you're like, let's go. You know, it's one of those deals. The other one I will, and I did forget to mention this, I would say is CM Punk's Cult of Personality. But the reason that is because Cult of Personality is also a hit song. Like, it's not just great, it's a hit song. But, like, could you imagine in 2020, or 2021, right? WrestleMania rolls around. You're there, and Otis is about to cash that Money in the Bank in, and all of a sudden that music hits, and you're just like, the literal roof would blow off of wherever they decide to have WrestleMania. I would say that's top. That's got to be a top one of our generation too, because making that switch for him, I really think turned him from being a what it was, like a star, top guy, to Hall of Famer no matter what, because his entrance was a game changer at that point. It was no longer just CM Punk, great wrestler, one of the best, always puts it on, to it's the whole package. There's nothing missing there for that. So, I mean, I go on and on. I'm big entrance music guys. Love the entrance.
For what it's worth, my wife is standing in front of me, and obviously you guys can't see, but when you asked what the greatest theme song of all time is, she's standing in front of me going like this.
Yes.
And I'd be remiss to say that when we were married, we came out to the reception to Daniel Bryan's theme song, and I'm sure you don't know this, PJ, but Miguel came out to Triple H's The Game. So.
See, I love that. We should have been friends then. I would have showed up. I'd have loved that. I think you with the surprise entrance, though.
And we were at each other's weddings, so we saw it firsthand, which was awesome.
I love that. You know, the funny thing about Daniel, so my wife she didn't know anything about wrestling. And that was like the one thing I told her. I was like, look, I got a lot of weird kinks, but like wrestling is the weirdest. I'll be honest with you. Like, people think it's weird. I take her to the fairgrounds. We do the whole Impact Zone thing and all that stuff. And her deal is she's the entrance thing too. She like the yes deal. She loves that. Yeah. You know, but the funny thing about the funny thing about Bryan Danielson, is that as an indie wrestler, he is one of the most underrated guys to figure out how to make little things matter more than anything else. And he used to come out to Final Countdown, right? That was like the big thing.
Yeah.
So he'd come down, like, you know, the song's playing or whatever. He'd do the whole loop, and he had it perfectly timed. He gets to the top, and he goes, "It's the final," and everyone does the da-na-na-na, da-na-na, like and you're like, I understand it's 500 people in a bingo hall, but Ring of Honor 04 is better than anything I've ever, like, that was like a huge moment for me to see all that stuff. So him doing that was a big deal. And so he's been able to turn these little things into major moments. That's what makes him a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, I'd put him in today. If he never wrestled another match, doesn't matter. He's Hall of Famer all day long because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was a fun little topic to kick off the show about entrance music, and it was obviously very fitting since we have you as our special guest. But we're going to kind of just jump right into what our main topics here. And obviously, we're coming hot off the heels of night 2 of the WWE 2020 draft. So I want to just kind of kick it off. Obviously, we saw what happened on Monday Night Raw. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts. Nick, I'll give it to you first. What did you think overall of last night's show on Monday Night Raw as far as the draft was concerned? And who do you think had the upper hand between Raw and SmackDown when the dust settled?
Well, I'll say this. I'm happy that The Fiend ended up going to Raw so that we don't look like – because I know I had mentioned, you know, when you read the dirt sheets and you kind of are involved in this as much as you're involved in it, you forget what's, like, been announced and what really hasn't. So I did kind of telegraph that. Sorry to anybody that's a big, you know, fan who doesn't like the spoilers and stuff, but The Fiend did go to Raw. It's hard for me to pick who had the upper hand. I think both shows, given the current rosters, are pretty evenly matched. I will say that, gun to my head, next week I can only watch one episode of Raw or SmackDown. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think even with The Fiend being my favorite wrestler, I think I'm tuning into SmackDown because Roman Reigns is the best thing going right now in professional wrestling, and I can't believe as a 35-year-old man I'm saying that Roman Reigns is the best thing going in professional wrestling, but I fucking love Roman Reigns. I mean, right now, everything he is doing is gold, so I'm tuning into SmackDown if I had to, but I think if I had to give a slight edge, I think I would give it to Raw just because of The Fiend and AJ Styles. I mean, I don't know, man. It's a tough question. You could certainly sway me either way.
Yeah, absolutely. PJ, I want to hear your thoughts.
You know, the more I'll be honest with you, man, it's hard for me because I think this is probably the worst managed roster that they've had with the most talent, right? It's almost, I'm not a Yankee guy, but I'm going to compare it to the Yankees, right? How do you have Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and not win a series? How do you have Alvarado Chapman? Yeah, stuff like that. It's the same situation. Look, man, I understand. I don't understand enough of the business side to make dirt sheets and all that. I get it, and I'm a mark, and I understand the business. I get how it works, but to my point, it's really tough for me because it's like the most mismanaged opportunity. Like, there's not a better thing and I tweeted about this last night too, is that there's not a better thing in right now than the hurt business. When was the last time Lashley should have been relevant? Never. He's just not a good talker. But with MVP and it's so funny. I watched a match last night while I was waiting for New Japan to have live. I watched an old 2012 and MVP was going at it with Lance Archer, and I'm like, oh my God, MVP could go. Like, could just go. And he's great on the microphone. They have Cedric Alexander, who I love. And they have Shelton Benjamin, who's one of my favorite wrestlers. I love Shelton Benjamin as a big World's Greatest Tag Team fan. So, like, stuff like that. And I'm just like, they should be in the world title picture. I don't care. I love Drew McIntyre. Great. But, like, let's figure out a way to make him and Lashley a deal. And somehow they get involved. And I think Raw's super stacked, but I also love the Street Profits. Like, We Want the Smoke is the best. I love that. And I would say SmackDown still has Cesaro, who's another one of my favorite wrestlers. Like you said, man, gun to my head, the heel Roman Reigns deal. I don't like that they mentioned that he was going to wrestle Braun Strowman on Friday, and then they immediately showed a Hell in a Cell commercial where he's going to fight Jey Uso in the cell. I don't love some of those things where it's like, I know that you have people that think about this. It's like on a movie set, right? They have a guy that takes the Polaroids to make sure that shot's the same tomorrow as it is today. And someone didn't notice that this dude was wearing black shoes and yesterday he was wearing red. It's like the same thing. It's like, you didn't know that you were going to don't put that commercial out. Put it out on Friday after they have a match. I don't care. Just don't put it out today, because now I already know what's going to happen, but now I really know what's going to happen. You're not fooling me. And so that part of it, I don't like that, but I do think that Roman Reigns, as the tribal deal and, him with Paul Heyman, of course, is money all day long. I think that's SmackDown right now really does. SmackDown, also the 2-hour show, in all honesty, the 3-hour show is draining, man. There's a lot to do in a 3-hour show. And so SmackDown has a better opportunity to do with their talent it's easier. So I would say that SmackDown got out because they got a lot of talent. The Street Profits are young. They have a lot of tag teams there too. And I think, like you said, Roman Reigns is the best thing going. Rightfully so. Not only does he sell to the kids, and now he's a heel, so now he's got adults on that train. That's a win-win.
You said a lot of really interesting things, and we're going to tackle a lot of that. But and Nick knows where I'm going with this.
I do.
I don't know if you've heard a couple of our episodes or not, but Nick absolutely despises MVP. So the fact that you said that just
I think so. Here's the deal with that. I think that we are arguing the same point, but through different angles, because it's not that I don't like the Hurt Business. I definitely don't want to see MVP wrestle, but I could tolerate him in a managerial role. But it's just like Shelton Benjamin, we agree 100%, most talented wrestler I've ever seen. Cedric Alexander, love him too. The whole thing with Bobby Lashley is it seemed like they made the mistake the first time they had him, where like you have this guy who's just, as Jerry Lawler would say, has muscles in places most people don't even have places, and he's just a legit monster. And the stuff that they did with him just seemed like it didn't make any sense at all. And then you finally get him back. He's got a little bit of an MMA background, so he's now proved to have a little bit of legitimacy to him. He's almost like Brock Light. Like, you don't have to pay $1 million for Brock in appearance.
Right.
Because you have a guy that's a terrifying human being in physique and everything, and you put him in this storyline with Rusev and Lana that just drained any, like, appeal that I would have for him. If they just used him the right way, I think that the Hurt Business could be something really good. But to me right now, I just can't get out of my head that, and obviously you growing up, PJ, with wrestling too, no, it just seems like it's like Nation of Domination, like in the PG era. And I just wish, like, if you take this current group of wrestlers and you put them in 1996, I think arguably they'd be better than the Nation of Domination just based on the people that they have. Yeah, but you put them in 2020 in the PG era, and it just kind of seems like, I don't know where we're going.
I think that heels are booked worse than anybody in wrestling right now. And there's a funny thing that I've noticed lately, and I didn't become a huge New Japan fan until way later in life, but I was always a Great Muta guy, and so I have all these tapes of Great Muta. But the thing about American wrestling, and the reason that most people, why you don't want to see MVP wrestle, is 85% of his match is now in America, and the way it's based is this weird telegraphed wrestling, right? If I hit you with a clothesline, I go for the pin attempt, you immediately see his hands here to push him off, right? There's this immediate, and that's all American wrestling, right? Whereas if they could just go and hit each other, just legit how it is, strong style, rather, that's what you want to call it, and just go and treat it more old school, where everyone, now right now everybody's got to get their stuff in, right? That's what, Brian Cage, I got to get my shit in. I get it, yeah. But that takes away from it, and it's hard. I agree. I don't want to watch MVP wrestle. But as a heel group, what they should do every single week for 3 months is come down, find some way to cheat, steal, and win. Sorry, my dog's acting crazy.
That's all good.
Find some way to win Horseman style. That's what you should do. I don't understand why, as a heel group, you're booking them in the way that they did it last night with Ricochet. Very clever. That's a way to get it over without having. And I get it. You don't want to hurt either Cedric or Ricochet, right? That's a great way. And that Ricochet meme will live forever, right? Me when I got to wake up on Monday. Oh God, right? Anything. And it's one of those deals where it's just it's very tough. And heels are booked the worst in professional wrestling right now. Randy Orton is another one, man. Nobody's been more of a team player, but also just a sourpuss his entire life than Randy Orton, right? But he constantly but he's still booked pretty poorly. When they came out and fought at the end of the night last night, the one thing I thought was, why isn't one of them bleeding? They've been fighting for 20 minutes. You're trying to tell me one of them's not bleeding? Bro, just black McIntyre's eye in the back. Hey, dude, I'm going to hit you with this sock of soap real quick. Let me hit you one time. And then we can go on and do it. But it's just they're booked so poorly. And it's hard for that. I agree. I agree. That's I'm on this pedestal tonight. I don't get to talk about wrestling very often. So I'm on this soapbox here.
No, I think that to your point, they add an extra layer with the potential of, let's see Naomi join the group and get a feud involved. I think it could be something really, really cool. And if they're going to, feud with Retribution or continue to fight with Retribution, we know Retribution has female superstars in their stable. So let's get Naomi. Let's get some of them involved and have this thing be a Survivor Series clash. It'd be awesome.
It's so funny. I'll tell you one thing. They listen. I listen to the Bruce. I listen to a lot of Something to Wrestle With back. I listen to a lot of that. And one thing they always talk about when they talk about results is oh, this guy won via count out or this guy won via DQ. And this, I'd like to see some of that. I don't need a clean finish every week. I just don't need that. Because you're not treating it – it's almost like they want to treat it like indie wrestling, but they're let's not – we still run this business, right? It's still ours. And so, that kind of takes away from it because I've seen the same match 4 times and the same finish – and, yeah, the finish isn't really that different. That's the hard part. It's this programmed thing where the wrestlers absolutely have to do their signature, absolutely – and they're never going to win. The signature's not winning. It's like the Blue Thunder Bomb from Sami Zayn. It's never going to win. We know it. But it's cool to see – it's okay, let's stop doing the same signature move every week, or let's have 5 signature moves and maybe you only do that. And then, of course, you have the finisher. It's just, for me, that it takes away from it. And I think the heels are the worst impacted because they are it's just poorly managed, in my opinion, from a fan base standpoint. I've been watching for, 30, 25, 27 years or whatever. It's hard for me there. So where were we at? SmackDown 1?
We were talking about who the winner was between Raw and SmackDown.
So we agree it's SmackDown. What about you?
So, yeah, interesting that you boys both said SmackDown. I kind of thought Raw was the winner here. And I think we can all agree that above anything else, Raw got a major facelift than it did last year. Because if you add the likes of people with the talent that's coming to Raw, The Fiend, AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, Matt Riddle, right? You're still keeping Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre. I mean, the list goes on and on. They didn't have this much star power last year when they did.
I agree with that.
19 draft. So, while I agree that Roman Reigns is definitely the hottest thing in pro wrestling right now, he's definitely the number 1 heel. I've been a huge super fan of his since he came back at SummerSlam this past August. I think Raw may have gotten the better end of the deal because, yes, it's a 3-hour show, so they're definitely going to get more draft picks, right? But now you're adding the likes of, like I mentioned, the AJ Styles to the world. Yes, Seth Rollins is moving over to SmackDown, and Seth Rollins is definitely one of my favorite wrestlers, and I think he's going to do some incredible things on SmackDown. But now you give The Fiend a purpose, right? SmackDown is centered around Roman Reigns, so you can't have a mega talent like The Fiend and Roman Reigns two worlds collide on the same show. You can't do that, especially if it's a 2-hour programming. You add The Fiend to Monday Night Raw now. You got, like I mentioned, AJ Styles there, right, who's one of the best wrestlers, if not the best wrestler in the world. I mean, the list goes on and on. I think Raw definitely becomes a lot more enjoyable to watch being a 3-hour program than it was this time last year with the 2019 draft.
I'll agree with that part of it, too, 100%. I think that that's a big piece of it. I think they got a lot of great talent, and I do enjoy the matchup thing. I think Drew McIntyre is world champ's great because he's a monster, man. Look how big he is. That dude's he's a stud all day long. The one thing I did forget to mention about SmackDown that I think is the most intriguing is the Big E deal, because I think Big E, being a singles wrestler, everybody saw him in NXT. He was great when he first joined Ziggler, on the main roster and all that. I don't know that there's someone, but I am scared for him that they squander that and somehow manage to – he's not a comedy act. He is a comedy thing at first, but he wrestles – he's one of the best from a pure wrestling standpoint, he's a great wrestler, right? And I hope that he gets to do – that's the thing about SmackDown. I think they get to do a little bit more of the wrestling part of it, and that's what they want to do, right? That's always been kind of the SmackDown thing. Ever since they did the brand split with Heyman back in the day, it's always been like, you want to go there to be a pro wrestler. You want to go there and have like 5-star matches and do that. And Monday you go here to be a megastar, right? Because back then they were, but now SmackDown's on the main channel. I don't know how many 5-star matches they're going to get, but I hope that he gets an opportunity to do something in that realm. And I love the Usos, man. Their stuff since they stopped doing the face paint and started being Uso Penitentiary. I hope that the Cell match lives up to its potential, because I think that they are one of the hottest deal. I love tag team wrestling. I don't know if you see my Instagram or you see my Twitter and all that. I'm a huge tag team wrestling fan. So to see them, hopefully that'll continue, or at least maybe we'll get an Intercontinental title deal. And, I think he could have some really, really good matches. So, but I agree with you on the Monday. They got a major facelift for sure.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you both. Nick, I'll start with you. What's one matchup in particular with this shakeup now that you're excited to see? If you had to pick one matchup of two talents, who would you go with?
That's a tough question, honestly. And I don't necessarily know if there's a specific matchup that I like. I think seeing a heel Roman Reigns interact with a heel Seth Rollins could be interesting. If Seth Rollins kind of goes back to a face, I think it would be cool to see a heel Roman Reigns against a face Seth Rollins. I like The Fiend really against anybody. I just think is super interesting. There's not like a specific matchup or potential, because when it comes to like these shakeups, and I mentioned it to you before, like very, very seldom is there a match that we haven't already seen. I mean, these guys have all fought each other multiple times. Maybe even Keith Lee and The Fiend, something we haven't seen before, like something super interesting. I don't know. I don't have a specific matchup, but there's certain people I'm excited to see in certain situations, let's say.
And PJ, I'm going to get your take in a second, but I actually wrote down Seth versus Roman, heel versus heel, be very interesting, right?
Yeah.
While they may not fight each other, I like to hear that story of how it plays out. Does Seth Rollins become kind of like a sidekick to Roman Reigns? Roman as the Samoan godfather. Maybe he kind of takes the likings of a Seth Rollins to kind of do some of his dirty work for him, with Paul Heyman kind of being the mastermind behind all of that. Obviously, their relationship in the Shield, right, for so many years together, there's so much chemistry and history between the two of them. But my matchup, and I don't know, and I hope this happens, is I'm looking forward to The Fiend versus McIntyre for the WWE Championship. Something about that match, I don't know what it is, but something about that match just kind of screams star power and box office attraction to me. So, PJ, I want to get your takes. What's one feud that you're looking forward to now with this shakeup?
Another point that I feel about the new age and mismanagement is they don't make the title people stars across the board. They're like, if you're an Intercontinental guy, you're only here. This is where you live, right? If you're the main guy, you live here. If you're tag guy, you don't really. But I think, one of my favorite things in the 90s, again, I do love tag wrestling and I love actual tag teams, but like Stone Cold and or Rock and Foley as tag champions, or Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels as tag, when all that stuff was going on, that's one of the cooler things. So one of the things that I think would be cool is to elevate stars is to all of a sudden the Street Profits are, they have a match with heel Reigns and heel, Rollins, and Reigns and Rollins become champs, right, or whatever. But you have this like constant battle where it's like one of them is, the heavyweight champ too, or you've got someone else that's elevated to that point, and now you've got multiple stars and there's levels to this whole thing. I'd love to see, though, the Street Profits versus Nakamura and Cesaro. As much as I'm a big Cesaro guy. I'd find some way to get him a mouthpiece and he'd be world champion for at least a month. I mean, he'd have a longer reign than Wyatt did, but The Fiend. But in some form or fashion, I can't wait to see. I'm a big Nakamura guy too, but I love the strong style, like actual aggressive wrestling that both of them do, and both of them being fluid and whatnot. So I'm excited to see that. I'm also excited to see, I'm sure Nakamura is going to move on and Cesaro will get another tag partner. So I'm interested to see who that could be too. But number one, I think I agree, man. Rollins and Reigns from a SmackDown perspective. On Raw, anybody with McIntyre, because he really hasn't got a chance to fight anybody since he's been back, right? AJ Styles, he's done this Orton thing's run its course. At some point, they're going to hang that up. Him versus The Fiend would be really cool. Him versus Strowman, monster against monster, but somehow manages to make it happen. I'm not a big Braun guy. I mean, I get it. He's 7 foot. He's 400 pounds. I get it. But I'm not a big Strowman guy. But it's still cool to see those matchups. And I think McIntyre as champ versus a lot of people before they're ready to really elevate the next person up is going to be really cool.
I got a question to piggyback off that. I was pulling up the SmackDown roster while we were talking, and you look at, I think a month ago, if you were to ask, at least me personally, if you were to say the main event of WrestleMania is going to be what, I would have said it was going to be Bray Wyatt, The Fiend against Roman Reigns. But now that's not going to happen because we know that The Fiend is on Raw and you got Roman Reigns on SmackDown. So you're looking at a roster of like the big names, just the big names. You got Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, Daniel Bryan, Kevin Owens, Jey Uso, Big E, Aleister Black, Apollo Crews, Otis, and we'll stop at that. Do you think they've telegraphed the fact that it has to, at this point, be Roman Reigns versus The Rock in the main event of WrestleMania? Like, who else? I agree with you when it comes to Big E. Like, I think Big E is super talented. And I hope they don't make the same mistakes with Big E that they did with Lashley, because Big E is a legitimate monster as well and super talented. But who's a money-making? Roman Reigns, if Roman Reigns is healthy, he's in the main event. So who is he in the main event with? I mean, do they bring back Brock? At that point, you would think if the NFL goes the way that it's going, you would have to think that there's going to be a live crowd in WrestleMania in 2021. So are you going with The Rock? I mean, I feel like they're telegraphing the fact that it has to be The Rock and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania.
I didn't think of it that way, but again, I don't, the long-term booking, I never know anymore. I feel like they change weekly. That's a great question, but I don't know, man. I think Roman versus The Rock makes sense, and that's fine. But, like, does The Rock need another WrestleMania moment? Like, I don't know that he does. In all honesty, I just don't know that he needs another one, whatever. And I think there's a lot of people that probably agree. Again, we love to see The Rock, right? And I get that. But, like, can he tag with somebody and, like, be the semi-main event, and then we get, Roman versus somebody, and they make it worthwhile to watch?
I agree with you, but we're talking about a federation entertainment, World Wrestling Entertainment, where if COVID didn't exist and none of this happened, like one of the marquee matches at last year's WrestleMania was going to be Roman Reigns against Bill Goldberg. And you want to talk about like guys we don't need to see anymore?
Yeah, he's over the hill. He jumped the shark over the hill, needs to retire, quit something, all of that deal.
100%.
There's nobody I want to see less than Bill Goldberg.
Thank you.
Since '99 ended.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I get the Goldberg thing was cool, and the spear was great, but I don't need two guys with the same finishing move in a match together. I also need to see Goldberg try to jackhammer Braun Strowman. Like, I get it, bro. You made your point, you made your money, and you took us all for a ride, and it's great. But 02 sucked when you came back that time, and it sucks now, okay? I don't need any of it.
I agree with you 100%.
One point about this is a funny story. My wife says we're sitting there watching. When did Goldberg beat Brock? Was that SummerSlam of 18?
Survivor Series was the first one.
Okay. So we're sitting there, and my wife says, man, you know what would be really crazy? And this is like, I'm talking a minute before the match starts. They're still in the hype thing, right? They're showing the hype video. She says, wouldn't it be crazy if someone just came out and, like, won immediately? And then I was like, are you kidding? She's never watched wrestling in her life, and she's going to come out of left field with that, and that's what happens? My mind was blown. I was like, what just transpired? This has got to be one of the worst moments in wrestling because it makes absolutely no sense. I get you want to give Goldberg back what happened at 20, whatever. I get it. But, like, bruh, that was years ago. You're not over that yet? We're over it. We didn't need to see it again. We're all over it in 2004, you know? I don't know. Funny. I don't need to see Goldberg, though.
It's really funny you mentioned this shit because I remember in that pay-per-view, like, my wife's like a fan, but she's not like a super fan. But she'll watch. She went to bed right before the main event. I was like, and I distinctly remember this. I was like, why are you going to bed? Like, it's Brock Lesnar against Goldberg. She's like, I'm going to bed. So, like, 10 minutes later, I came to bed, too. And I was like, oh, the match is over.
Yeah, that was it.
So, I
agree. It's just one of those things. And I didn't need to see Gold. And I get that, you know, to a certain extent. Like, I understand the Undertaker deal. But I've been over the Undertaker deal since it became a one-off. Like, the year he started doing the one-offs, like, okay, that was it for me. Like, I don't need any more of that. And I get that it sells to a certain extent, and there's that nostalgia effect of it. But, like, for me, Chevy, say hi.
What's up, Chevy?
But, yeah, I just, you know, for me, it's like, I don't know. And so that's the hard part with the new wrestling for me is that they have these, like, part-timers, and that part-timer stuff kind of ruins it for me because – and I think there should be an off-season, and so then everybody would be, you know, whatever. But I just think I just get tired, and I'm like, I don't want to see that at all.
So
I have no love.
I want to ask you then, PJ, because it's curious. So normally, and I get everything that you're saying, but you're telling me you wouldn't be hyped for a Roman Reigns versus The Rock showdown at WrestleMania, given the way the storyline's going with Roman Reigns being the true tribal chief, the Samoan godfather, to run through his entire lineage and heritage of family, right? He's going to destroy his cousin in Hell in the Cell. He's going to probably take out his uncle Rikishi at some point.
That's what I was going to say. As long as he takes out Rikishi with a car, and it has to be a town car, and it has to be the same town car that he hit Rock with. It can't be anything different.
But all jokes aside, right? Taking out Rikishi, and I'm forecasting here, obviously, maybe even his father, right? Maybe his girl cousins, Tamina, Nia Jax, end up joining his side. Something crazy happens. Running through that entire family just to hear either at the Royal Rumble or maybe the Raw or SmackDown, in this case, the SmackDown after the Royal Rumble, the Rock's music hit to say, no. I'm the true tribal chief of the Samoan family. You're telling me you wouldn't be hyped for that match in the main event?
See, I agree with that part of it. I'm just saying, does Rock need another wrestler? Like, if Roman's going to go over, and he'd have to go over, right? He'd have to go over. If Roman's going to go over and they do it, like, in a cool way where, yes, he takes out the family. In all honesty, like, I think they really missed a chance with the Bloodline deal. Like, the Bloodline should have been what the Hurt Business, what I want it to be, what the Horsemen are, what DX was, what, you know, Evolution was. It should have been that, right? World champ, tag champs, find another one of their family and put an Intercontinental. Like, they should have held all the gold, and that should have been the deal. And now that he's going to take them all out, I agree with that too. I'm cool with that. I would definitely be hyped for that as long as Roman goes over. And I don't even like Roman. Like, I'm not a big Roman guy, but as long as he goes over. Hey, let's go outside. Well, give me 1 second.
Yeah, absolutely. So, regardless, I think Raw and SmackDown definitely both got a major facelift, and excited to see what happens on here. I want to move on and talk about two, interesting things that happened on Raw last night, and we'll kind of combine these two topics together. The first is the fact that after last week, Ali being named the face, the leader of Retribution, to now not being shown at all, and no sight of retribution whatsoever. However, they did get drafted to Monday Night Raw. They made sure that they made that known, as well as in the main event of Monday Night Raw last night, not just any Monday Night Raw, the 2020 Draft Night Part 2, Lana wins the #1 contendership for the Raw Women's Championship to face Asuka, which I think is going to happen next week on Raw, on the season premiere Monday Night Raw. What do you guys think of these two interesting topics that took place last night? PJ, I'll start with you on this one.
You know, one of the things I love, I love a good, I love tag team, but I love a good stable. I think stables are underutilized now because mostly, from what I've heard and read, Vince McMahon's just not a big fan of them. Like, he just doesn't think it makes sense. The one thing about Retribution that is hard is that social media is so difficult on it. They make you almost hate it because you read so much hatred online. Of, this is dumb. It's just like, give it an opportunity. Like, I get that they changed, you know, who we believe to be Donovan Dijak, right? Dijakovic, whatever y'all want to call him. You know, I believe that him to be the T-Bar guy and Dio Madden is Slapjack. All that, I get that. What would have been cool is like, hey, now we've revealed ourselves. Ali being the leader was maybe the best curveball they could have done. Because Ali is the most. Again, he doesn't get hurt. I don't know if we see Kofi Mania if he doesn't get hurt, right? We all know that. So Ali really needed to be a major player in that. And last night, to not show them destroying the draft stage, like doing like what? Like, instead you showed me at one point, like I love Kevin Owens and I love Aleister Black, but like, dude, I don't need another match of theirs. Like, what are you trying to blow off there? There's no blow-off on Monday Night Raw. There's a blow-off on a pay-per-view, but there's not a blow-off on Monday. And so for me, it was like, you couldn't have done something where they just, like, saved that time up front, used that beginning, you know, for something else, and then started with that. I don't know. I am very disappointed that they weren't there because I really thought that they had a cool thing going with the whole Retribution.
Nick, I'll ask you for, you know, kind of pivoting to the other side. Lana winning the Raw Women's Championship #1 contendership match. What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's WWE booking at its finest. I mean, right? You have so many talented women, and you choose Lana as your #1 contender. And we all know what's going to happen. And if you listen every week, you know that my biggest gripe with WWE is when they come up with these fucking storylines that you are telegraphed outcomes from a mile away. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Lana is going to lose the match. Like, she's not going to beat Asuka. But I just want to say one thing real quick on the Retribution thing. Not so much. I agree with everything PJ said, and you know, we've talked offline, and it was kind of a similar thing. But I take back what I said. One of the matches that I'm super excited about, and you called it last week on the show, was the subtle text or the subtle tweet that Ali sent to Kofi Kingston, and PJ touched on it a little bit. There's no Kofi Mania if Ali doesn't get hurt, and I'm super excited. Like, when Kofi Kingston fights Ali one-on-one, it's going to be fucking amazing. Like, the two of them can go. It's going to be a great match. It's going to be what you want out of a professional wrestling match. So I'm super excited for the potential for that, and you know that's where they're going. But I got a question for you guys. And I'm not saying I necessarily believe it, but just to play like seventh man to create something different. Like, do you think they gave Lana this opportunity to almost in a way stick it to Rusev? Like, yeah, Rusev, you're gone. You're on a different show. Like, we're going to give her an opportunity that we never really gave to you. Like, what? I just don't understand why they would pick her. Like, what about her is appealing outside of, and I hate to say it, but looks. Like, she's not a good wrestler. She's not a good talker. She's in arguably the worst storyline of last year. Like, what about her makes you want to watch her and Asuka and think like, hey, that's a match I want to tune in to see? Like, what's appealing about it?
Yeah, and I'll kind of answer that with another question, and I'll pose this one to you, PJ. Does Lana get any mainstream Monday Night Raw focus if Miro does not go on AEW Dynamite and tell Vince McMahon indirectly to kiss his ass? Because to me, that's the reason why all this happens. The reason why Lana got put through an announce table by Nia Jax 4 weeks in a row or whatever it was 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and is the reason now that she's getting the #1 contendership. I think Vince is sticking it to Miro.
You know, one of the things about Lana that I think is hard that we see as a wrestling fan, you know, one of the things that we grew up on were jobbers, right? They were jobbers. They didn't have faces and names that we knew. They ran on to be someone else, but there has to be, someone has to lose in a wrestling match. I hate the fact that Ryback said this, and it's like, look, you got to have a loser. Why aren't we paid the same? You can't do this without me. And I agree with that. You know, the funny thing is, WWE is always like, hey, make your own way. And it's funny how contradictory they are, right? Like Zack Ryder made his own way, but then they somehow managed to squander that, right? Like they were like, hey, man, this guy has a YouTube with 2 million viewers. Like everyone's watching Long Island Iced Tea, and they managed to screw that up. And now that they've taken away the third-party thing, right? Your Twitch has to belong to us, all this stuff. Dude, Lana is a social media superstar. There are people that follow her on Instagram and TikTok have no idea she's a professional wrestler. She is a megastar on the internet. And she's very good at making people not like her, which is a great heel move. Sometimes I think that she's such a good actress that she toys with people to just be like, yo, I can do this all day. Because I look like this. She's fantastic. She's exceptionally, she does a great job at what her job is, right? Which I think is to be that character. And I think that she surprisingly does it well. I'm on the opposite side of like, yeah, I heard Jeff Hardy call it a triple threat tag team match. So like, who's a good talker at this point? Like this idiot like goes on there. That's the matchup I'm most willing to succeed. Jeff Hardy versus his sober personality. Let's find out which wins that. See which wins that matchup this year. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's like hard for me because Lana, I think, is doing her job, and it's very tough. I actually love the Dana Brooke, Mandy Rose thing last night. I thought that was really good right up until Natalya kind of – because I think Lana can talk there, and Natalya's kind of like super stiff to me when she talks. She's like she's forcing you to tell – like she's a great wrestler. Like she's forcing you to listen to her sometimes. And so I was really excited what Lana had to say. And I was like, oh, they were like, no, Lana's not saying much. You get 2 words here. That's it. That's it for you. But I don't know. We're going to see. We'll find out. And I agree to answer your question, long story short. Yes and no. I think the Rusev thing is, I don't know, man. I think Rusev is a good sport. He did a very good job doing what he needed to do. He got the raw end of the stick, man. He immediately you're given the foreigner, U.S. sucks thing right off the bat, and he can wrestle. That kind of sucks. But we're going to really see. The thing that I love about these other promotions is you're going to see who can really wrestle and who the WWE made. That's the difference between going to another place. It's not about, they just take old WWE stars. It's not like TNA. It's not like that. It's like they only take old WWE stars. It's not that. You're going to really see who had the sauce and who WWE made a star. And that's the thing. I love Zack Ryder, but I also watched him wrestle in AEW, and I kind of thought you kind of have that WWE thing where everything's like choreographed and everything's like, oh, I'm going to push out here and I'm going to hit the hype rider here. And I get it, but you're going to really see we're going to find out if Miro, or Rusev has the ability to throw down in a stunner and can make his own way. I think that's the big thing about these other promotions.
I'll give you credit on one thing, Miguel. Sorry, just not to cut you off, but I'll give you credit on one thing. So I never thought about the idea that she is a super big internet star, and maybe with all of these Twitch and all these different things that I'm not a part of that world, so I don't really know enough about it. But maybe in a weird way they get these people to tune in and say, hey, we love her here, and now she's fighting for the title. Maybe we tune in, but I think a majority of the fans or the internet wrestling community or the people on the televisions and the Thunderdome, I think a majority of wrestling fans themselves, like the diehards, are probably not excited to see it. So do you cut off your nose to spite your face, or do you let it ride and see if you could bring in a whole new demographic, I guess would be the word.
Doesn't Vince McMahon always do that, though? But it's never actually biting his nose to spite his face. It's always, hey, this is my deal. I make the people start. Maybe he is, and maybe he has people around him that, hey man, she like has like 20 million combined followers between Instagram and TikTok. Like maybe this is a good move for us to try something, you know? And who's to say she doesn't promote it? And I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. I mean, Asuka may just strap in, hit that Asuka lock, and it be over. That may be all she wrote. I've got this great storyline I've wanted to have Asuka do. This would be the perfect time for Lana to do it. Is, you know, she brings the mask down, right? And it's got the gold straps. What if they treated that like a Jake the Snake type-esque thing where they took it and, like, that was, like, her power. It was like the urn, right? Like, that was Asuka's power, and all of a sudden she's, like, trying to get it back, but they just keep using it to beat her. Like, that's a foreign object. Boom, hit her in the head. She's done. Like, now they've taken this thing, and Asuka's trying to figure it out and, like, somehow find another way to make Asuka more interesting because she's great, right? But you got to continue to peel back that onion and make it more and more interesting. You can't just be champ. You got to do something. So maybe we figure out some way to get Lana over. I will not be surprised if she does win. It could be cool if Charlotte comes out and costs Asuka the title or something. You don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Maybe Natalya straps on the sharpshooter for like 3 minutes while the ref's out, and then Lana just spins her. That'd be cool. Who knows?
Never say never in the WWE, that's for sure.
That's right.
I want to kind of pivot to the other wrestling company, of course, the Rivals, which is AEW. They're coming up on Wednesday on their 1-year anniversary show. And we don't really need to go into the nitty-gritty of it, but what have you guys been thinking? And PJ, we'll start with you, obviously, because you're the guest here. But what have you thought of AEW over the last year? Do you think they would have gotten as big as they have gotten? Would you have ever predicted it to be this big?
So I'll hit this a couple different points here. One, I'm a big AEW supporter because I think they give opportunities to people, and you can say what you want about. I'm a huge Cody Rhodes fan. I was a big Dusty fan. As a kid, I didn't get to see his stuff when it happened. I saw it a lot later in life, but I was a huge Dusty fan. I was a huge Dustin fan when he got to WCW as the Natural. I'm a huge Rhodes family guy. I mean, I'm not tattooing the Nightmare family on my neck, but I'm a big Cody guy. I believe that Cody's a star. I see the problem with the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community, to me is that everyone has an opinion and everyone thinks that their opinion matters. My opinion doesn't matter to other people. I mean, I'm on the podcast, so but that's because I do music and so people want to talk. But my opinion is really irrelevant, right? I'm a Cody Rhodes guy, and I think he puts a lot of people over. For people to say that he doesn't. I saw something, they compare him to Triple H, and he's the lesser version of this, that, and other. And I'm like, listen, let me tell you guys something. Miro, Ryder, all these guys, all of the Jacksons, they're out of a job if it not for Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Tony Khan. All of those people are out of a job. That's it. So you can't say that they're not doing something alternative. Second point. I was at All Out last year. We did the whole, we did the StarCast thing. It was really cool. Seeing AEW live, seeing Arn Anderson hit the spine buster on Shawn Spears was like one of the coolest moments for me because I'm such an Arn Anderson fan. I'm an old school WCW fan, and that was really awesome. And it's funny because Shawn Spears is another perfect example. People are like, man, I can't believe he never made it in WWE and this, that, and that. It's like, you see him in AEW, it's just like he just doesn't have whatever it is to get to that point. Will they find it? If they do this Horseman thing that I think they're going to, he'll find it, and that's great. But he just doesn't have it. Unfortunately, the sauce is not there. But I do believe that they've given guys opportunities to get to this 1-year thing. Last point, Omega, Hangman, Moxley, Jericho, Rhodes, and Young Bucks are money no matter what. I don't love Pentagon and Rey Fenix because I don't love Lucha Libre because all of it looks like people say, right, there's all the flippy spots and all this stuff. It's like they do less selling than anyone I've ever met in my entire life. And I get it. That's part of Lucha, but I don't – that's not my thing. However, they make money because they've got to go Sierra Medio. The whole place goes nuts, all that. But there are guys, the top guys at AEW are top guys in WWE, whether you like that or not. If the Young Bucks came, you're not going to tell me that they're not the Hardys, the Rockers reincarnated. I mean, don't get me wrong, WWE could screw it up, but like, you're not going to tell me that they don't make money. You're not going to tell me that Omega isn't a star. And they've done the perfect thing, right? They did almost like this Okada thing where they beat him and they brought him down to this lower level because he's an international star. He's not a star in America, like other than like the indie stuff, like that people know, but they're going to build him back up to be a 5-star. All he does is hit matches, right? But they just have guys like that, and I think that they're stars regardless of where they are. And so I'm excited to see what year 2 brings because Jericho, of course, is the glue that brings it all together. Nobody talks better. Nobody's a better commentator. I mean, I'd listen to Jericho do the entire AEW episode by himself. I truly believe that they have a lot of great things going for them, and I hope that they find their footing and continue to do the great things that they're doing. Impact squandered what they had because they couldn't afford to make it happen that long. They just didn't. Jeff Jarrett's pockets aren't long, and he ran out of runway to do what he was doing that made NWA TNA cool when it was on pay-per-view every week. He just couldn't keep doing that. And it's hard, and I think AEW's done a great job of that, and I'm excited to see. I think if anybody, if you haven't watched wrestling in a long time, you check out AEW and see, oh, well, this is different. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing you're expecting, and it's a great alternative. And I like it a lot, but I watch all of it, so what do I really know?
Do you have a preference between WWE and AEW, or you like them about the same?
Man, I'll be honest, I'm a big NXT guy, but NXT without fans and now without Morrow, man, it's different. It's not the same. Now, the CWC is really cool, their new Capitol Wrestling Center. They also put on the best pay-per-views. I think that their specials. TakeOver is still the best thing. If you're going to watch one thing, I would watch that. The takeovers are great. And, but if I had to pick right now, I would say I watch AEW. It's hard for me to watch main roster WWE right now because I just don't think they're having banger matches yet. And I think that there's a lot of stuff I see that I love. Like I said, the Hurt Business, Street Profits, and guys like that. But gun to my head, I'd say I watch AEW. I prefer it right now. It reminds me of when I was younger as a WCW fan. I think there's nostalgia in it. I don't love listening to JR anymore. I mean, it's different than it was. It's not by God he killed him. It's oh man, who's that in the ring right now? It's a little different.
Right. But
when Jericho's there, they have the guest commentator. Taz does okay. There's a lot of cool things. I hate to be biased, right? I hate to pick if all else fails, but gun to my head, I'd say AEW right now.
Nick, did you think that AEW would be as big as it is when you're into it?
Yeah, because of Jericho. I think getting Jericho was like the biggest signing. And WCW was big, but they were never as big as when they had Hulk Hogan. And it's kind of the same thing. I mean, Jericho is to AEW what Hulk Hogan is to WCW. And man, PJ touched on so many different points that I wanted to kind of touch on. And I know we could literally have this show in 5 hours if we wanted it to be. But I know that time is the factor. So I mean, like, who wouldn't want to see the Young Bucks against the Street Profits or against the Usos? Like, fucking A, man. That'd be like,
I'm telling you, all
that'd be so good. And like,
revival is all I'm going to say. Young Bucks revival, when that happens, is going to, and even with the Young Bucks not being the best-selling tag, they're a great tag team more than people think. That's going to be the greatest tag team match of whatever year that they wrestle. There won't even be, because the Revival, in my opinion, is everything I've ever wanted a tag team to be. They're my favorite tag team. And so, to your point, that's exactly it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
you're good. No, you're good, man. And,
they have the worst merchandise in the history of wrestling. No one's had worse merch than the Revival. And I'm so disappointed because I'm a wrestler. If you've noticed my social media too, like, bro, my tee collection is undefeated. Outside of Wrestling for Sale in New York, who's got the best old school collection, my wrestling t-shirt collection is undefeated. That's my I wear a different one on stage every time I play shows. So that's like a big thing for me. And the Revival have the worst wrestling t-shirts of all time. WWE couldn't even save them.
No, I mean, and then, the point you made about Cody, like, not putting people over, like, fucking Brody Lee, like, beat the fuck out of him, like, bad, like, abused him. So I don't necessarily agree with that either, but when I watch AEW, I want to try to grab what I remember as a kid, a little bit more. Like, I think that they've established managers better than WWE has with like the old school guys. Like that's the Bobby the Brain Heenans. That's the Jimmy Harts. That's like the Sensational Sherrys. Like that's what I grew up with. That like I just can't. When I'm bored, like I'll put it on the WWE Network and I'll watch the '92 SummerSlam, or I'll watch, the '90 Survivor Series, because I just miss that. And like the closest thing that I have to that right now in 2020 is AEW. Like I just feel like I give them the slight edge in what I would rather watch just because of that. All of that to say, like WWE has the star power and the ability to like flip on a switch and like in one match make it just be like I have to watch that because that's like huge. Like they have the names, they have the stars. It's kind of like, and it's a terrible analogy because you got the Tampa Bay Rays beating the Yankees to go to the playoffs, but like AEW is Tampa Bay. Like, yeah, they're fucking good, right? And on any given day, they could beat the Yankees. But like, if you're looking at the names, if you're looking at the stars, who probably sells more jerseys? Who's like the team that's going to sell out day in and day out? Like, it's the fucking Yankees. Like, WWE is the Yankees.
Yep.
And AEW is the Tampa Bay Rays, and sometimes the Tampa Bay Rays are just better. And to me, AEW right now is better, but that's not to say that WWE can't be the best or like get me involved in the match that I'm like, oh my God, I need to see that right now.
I'll make one point to that. If they cared about, I think the difference between AEW and WWE right now is specifically AEW cares about the merchandise, but they don't care about the merchandise as much as WWE cares about the merchandise, right? So there's this thing that WWE does where they absolutely have to put over whatever it is to get the kid vote. And it's not about the PG, or it has nothing to do with that. They've got to get the kid vote in. And the kid vote is not the same as us. They haven't been watching it for 30 years, right? They've been watching it for 2 years, and they love Roman Reigns, and that's what they know. And so they further down that path. But imagine just going in on Friday nights, and all of a sudden, man, you're like, I know there's going to be bangers tonight, right? You know why I know? Because they talked about it last week, and they like made this thing, and it wasn't some idiot storyline in the back where they're watching the TV like weirdly and something happens and then it pans away to some other thing. It's not so much this. It is entertainment, but let's not take away the sport part, which I think if WWE flipped that switch back on, could you imagine though, like if Paul Heyman and Bruce really got to do what they do? Dude, Bruce would 100% have Raw. It would be full 90s nostalgia. They would have managers. There would be it would be full Bruce.
Yep.
And Heyman would have, and it would be full Heyman, like just banger matches all day. There'd be some dumb stuff, but there was some dumb stuff in the 90s, man. The gobbledygooker, I'm still, every time I turn that Survivor Series on, I think about that. Yeah. And so AEW, luckily right now, they do, the one thing about AEW that you'll notice is that they botch more than WWE. And WWE maybe covers it up better or whatever, but you'll notice that in AEW, they do botch more because they take more risks because they're trying every single match. It has to be a banger to them. Then that's a cool thing, but that's this is not derogatory towards independent wrestling, but in independent wrestling, every match has to be a banger. Like that's why you're on the indies. Every match is a banger.
So AEW, I'm going to interrupt you really quick because you brought up an interesting point about AEW, right? Saying that every match has to be a banger. What about, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here, NXT, right? Every match is fantastic.
Every match.
Before, every takeover, every match is 5-star, 4.5 to 5 stars. How come they don't botch? Ever. Almost ever.
See, I also agree. That's a great point. I think that those guys that's a great point. I think the differences in NXT is they don't have as many inexperienced guys from a TV perspective.
Great point.
Those guys are training every single day to be TV guys at the Performance Center, and I think that's the one difference. Because I do agree, NXT, honestly, like I said, I love NXT. But, man, without the fans, for some odd reason, it just feels different. I mean, I would watch NXT every week before AEW was a weekly show. I'd watch the NXT show, and I know it was taped, and I knew it was going to happen, but I would watch those because I enjoyed a lot of the guys they had on and stuff. And I still do, right? I hate to say this. Velveteen Dream as a wrestler, I love. As a human being, I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it. I wasn't there. I'm not going to call him a pedophile. They can call, I don't know. Whatever. As a wrestler, I love Velveteen Dream. And so, like, that part of it, like, that's the cool thing about NXT is they still have that entertainment thing that differentiates themselves from AEW, and that's why those are still two different things. Because their entrance themes are different. The way that they present the wrestlers are different. Like, one thing about AEW is, like, only the top guys have the great entrances, unfortunately. I think that will change, and they'll realize, like, yo, again, in order to be, you got to have a banger match, but you also got to have a banger entrance. Like, is there anybody that doesn't yell Adam Cole, baby, when he puts his arms up? Like, at the house? I do it at the house. Doesn't matter. I can put the song on shuffle. I'll just be, boom, I'm doing it. Not a question in my mind. I'm doing it as soon as it happens. So, like, that, to your point, the botch thing is I think those guys are just a little less, they're a little more experienced to do that, whereas AEW, they've got a lot of guys that they are trying to give opportunities to, like the Griffin kid, Brian Pillman Jr., Jack Evans, or not Jack Evans, excuse me, Jack Perry. Jack Evans is one, though, too, but Jack Evans is like another lucha guy, right? So that's kind of my theory on it. I don't really know. I'm not there, of course, but from a watching perspective, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Let's just take just real quick, Miguel. Because you guys are much bigger on the independents in like NXT. Like I always tell Miguel, and if you watch the show, you know, like I don't watch NXT because I like to be surprised when they come up to the main roster and do that. But I'll go on record as saying like
I love that.
I think it was like, what was it, the 2015, the one with Finn Balor against like Kevin Owens in the main event? Like that NXT takeover, I think it was the Brooklyn one, is definitely top 5 best pay-per-views I think I've ever seen. Like that pay-per-view from start to finish, and maybe it's because 90% of those people are on the main roster now, so I identify with them. But when I look at NXT as like a fan who I like AEW, I like WWE, but like my fandom stops there. Like I can't commit fucking more than like 10 hours of wrestling. Like I don't watch NXT, but like when I think NXT, like word association for an NXT, like I think of NXT as like the all-star team of indie wrestlers. Like, and of course the indies have a lot of really great wrestlers and things like that, but NXT to me is like the all-star team. Like not everybody can be the best, but NXT grabs the indie people from all over, and they just put together this product that is just botch-proof because they're fucking the elite of the elite indie people. And it's just super entertaining, like the few times that I get to watch it, and maybe I'm into it more because I have no vested interest
right. That's 100% it.
Like it's just super entertaining, and I would put NXT above really anything in terms of pure matches. But of course, you know, WWE has a star power and AEW has a nostalgia, so I edge towards them. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with NXT when it comes to like matches.
It just goes to show you, Hunter is what's good, the best for business, right?
I was a big Hunter guy as a kid, so I'm with you, man. Miguel, you're not telling me anything I don't know. I'm a big Hunter guy. I was a big DX guy, big Evolution guy, because he gets it, right? He
totally does.
He understands the entertainment side, which is why NXT is so great. And he also understands what people want to see and don't want to see. I think, unfortunately, like I said, the ratings deal right now where everyone's like, oh, man, NXT gets 750,000 and AEW gets 900,000 and this, that, and other, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, let me tell you something. You pick one to watch on Wednesday night, and then you watch the other one Thursday morning. That's what I do.
That's what I do.
So you're not counting my vote, but it is what it is. We're counting apples and oranges, but you know, I hope that I do hope that Triple H takes over.
Yeah, absolutely, and I enjoy it a lot. And the point I was going to make really quick, right before we end the show, I know we're kind of running out of time here. We're winding down, but what you said earlier about WWE kind of flipping on a dime, right? Switching on a dime there, flipping a switch real quickly. Over the summer, if I had to ask you both real quickly, and it's kind of a question I'll answer myself, but to me, the hottest heel in pro wrestling, the beginning of summer, let's say June or July, was MJF. In 1 month's time, in late August, Roman Reigns comes back, and in 1 week, Roman Reigns is the hottest heel in WWE, right? And that's the star power that WWE has. That's what Nick was saying earlier about the Yankees and the Rays, right? The Rays, yes, a great team. They defeat the Yankees all day. You know, it's great. Everything's great. But at the end of the day, the Yankees or the WWE are the New York Yankees, right? Roman Reigns comes back, aligns himself with the great Paul Heyman. Next thing you know, Nobody's talking about MJF, or they are. I'm still talking about MJF, but I'm talking about I can't wait to see Roman Reigns take on his cousin, Jey Uso, one half of the former WWE Tag Team Champion, Jey Uso, a guy that's never main evented a pay-per-view before. I'm heading into Clash of Champions and now Hell in a Cell saying, I can't wait to see this match. Why? Partly because Jey Uso is an incredible wrestler and he's done really well on the mic this last month or so, but 90% of it is because of what they've done with Roman Reigns.
Not a question. 100% on the nose.
And that just goes to show the star power that WWE has. But in all honesty, I do enjoy AEW a lot too. I think they've done tremendously well for themselves. 1 year looking back, I knew they were going to be big, but did I think they would be this big this quickly? I don't know. I don't think so. And I know Jericho is obviously a big reason for it. Cody Rhodes, he's a hell of a wrestler, tremendous talent, a big part of it as well too. You got the Young Bucks, you got Omega, Hangman Adam Page, fantastic storyline they're doing. I thoroughly enjoy AEW. I think Wednesday nights is, besides Saturday, maybe my favorite night of the week because I enjoy both those shows.
Well, and I gotta thank you real quick. I gotta thank you, PJ, because I was definitely getting a phone call after this from Miguel crying about your love for AEW over WWE. So luckily, you said that you love Triple H. So now I don't think I'm going to get that phone call. But Miguel is the biggest fucking market when it comes to WWE by far. So he is.
That's okay.
He is
Look,
pro
man,
WWE.
Pro wrestling's for everybody. I'm a true believer in that. Like I said, everybody gets their own thing, and that's one thing for me that's weird. Is that, like I said, I watch a lot of independent wrestling. I got into the indies because a buddy of mine got into the indies back in the 2000s when we were in high school and showed me all, and I was like mind blown. I've got a huge collection of PWG. DVDs, seeing young guys, Bryan Danielson, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, all those guys back in the day, like back in the day. We're not talking about Ring of Honor we're talking about PWG back in the day. So I'm just a big pro wrestling fan as a whole, and I try to see the good in all of it because there's a lot of bad. Don't get me wrong. There's a ton of terrible stuff, but I don't need to watch all of it, So, New Japan is cool for me, like I mentioned, and I have but I try to support all of it. I watch a lot of vintage stuff. I keep it on pretty much in the background of at work day. I have it on in the background pretty much all day on WWE Network or New Japan World or any of that stuff, I try to catch up on MLW, at least follow it on Twitter and see what's going on or any of that stuff to see. Impact is one of those ones where I don't watch it weekly. I do record it, and then I try to, if there's a banger match, I'll be like, that I see on the internet, I'll turn it on and be like, oh, this was super dope, right? Some of that, it's just I try to watch as much that I can handle or intake because there is a lot of, but I don't get into the IWC. That's the one thing, like the internet wrestling community is like really, I follow a lot of the positive people and I follow some of the ones that are at least give you some type of information. There's some things. I don't do the dirt sheet thing because I just don't need to see what Meltzer thinks about whatever. I don't need to hear Cornette complain about Joey Janela. I don't need, right? So I try to keep it on the positive side and just love wrestling for what it is to me. And, that's one of those things where the AEW conversation, it's like I said, I watch one on Wednesday, watch the next on Thursday when I can. And I don't ever it's hard for me. Like I said, I told Miguel, the main roster thing, I probably don't watch Raw and SmackDown. But I watch SmackDown if we're going to a drag race. So if we're on the road, I get to watch SmackDown more than any when I'm on the road because Friday nights are typically stuff's done and I can sit around and watch it and I don't have, much else to do. So I probably watch SmackDown more than I watch Raw, but all I want to see is the Hurt Business day. So I try to see those segments or try to see the Retribution stuff to see what they're kind of coming up with, things like that. So like I said, it's a lot to intake, man. I'm a mark too, Miguel. Don't feel bad. When Triple H takes over inevitably, we'll see what happens.
The world will rejoice when the game takes over the main roster.
That's right. That's right.
I agree.
Well, guys, this has been a hell of a lot of fun for me. I think I speak for Nick as well too, PJ. We really appreciate you coming on, my friend. It's been a tremendous conversation. Before we let you go, though, we want you to kind of plug your shit away. How can the viewers find you?
Yeah, man. Well, first, thank you guys for having me, man. And shout out to TruExact. Scott has become a friend of mine just randomly when we met in New York and Brooklyn. So it's cool to have that conversation. Thank you guys for having me on to talk about wrestling. I love to talk everybody's ear off about wrestling when people love it. So it's cool. But you can check me out again, thepjnorth.com. I'm on Facebook, PJ North, Instagram, PJ North. Let's see. Twitter is official PJ North. I'm on TikTok, but I do have a brand new single coming out next Friday. It's called LA to Me. I'm very excited. I've been releasing music quite a bit. Quarantine's been good to me for that. I've been able to just kind of focus on writing and get with other people and other artists and do the whole songwriter thing for other people, but also release my stuff and stay active and whatnot. So, yeah, LA to Me comes out 10/23. You can pre-save. Links in bio. That's a big part of my social media pitch, so check that out. But, again, thank you guys so much, man. I'd love to come back sometime and talk more about wrestling if you guys will have me.
Absolutely.
We'll absolutely have you again. This has been like Miguel sent out for those of you who just listen and don't know the behind the scenes. Like Miguel sent us an agenda. Like that didn't even need to happen. Like we could have just fucking talked for like 2 hours about just anything. Like this was super entertaining for even myself. Like going like a trip down memory lane and. I definitely appreciate you. We're definitely going to have you back on because this was a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
110%. As always, guys, make sure you catch us on the on Instagram at TruExact Radio. You can find us on YouTube, TruExact Radio, Spotify, TruExact Radio, and, of course, the podcast app on our iPhones and Spotify as well, too. So, guys, been a lot of fun. PJ, we'll definitely have you back again and appreciate you joining on, my friend.
Thanks, guys. See y'all.
Take care.